Welcome to 13 Fashion Styles Children Should Know. And today, well, mainly it's just going to be about women. Alright, first movement, the century of fashion begins. Alright, here this is the early 20th century. And since it's the earliest 20th century, there are a few things that actually make this a pretty fashionable place, at least for the time. From now on, people, like women mostly, actually, I'm only going to be talking about women today because there's no men here. Women actually got more freedom of their own rights and how they should wear their own clothing. Now, you can go ahead and they really needed smelling salts whenever they really needed it for several reasons. Firstly, it's these kinds of dresses that they wore themselves. These dresses that they wore was actually makes them look tight, but they're actually too tight. So tight, in fact, that it actually squeezes the lungs, preventing the woman from actually going ahead and breathing in air, which as a result makes them have a little fainting, if not death. And that's why they always had these breathing salts inside here too, smelling salts, which went ahead and they kept in their hands, and when they actually went ahead and sniffed those smelling salts, they literally woke back up and their lungs would come back in and they'd be woken up again. Of course, there are other kinds of fashion trends too. If you remember this picture of Emile Floge, which was painted by Gustav Klimt, you'll probably know what it was pretty like. Back then, this was pretty fashionable. Alright, another kind of thing that we actually have to talk about is the Wiener Wachsgast postcard. In fact, this just makes the woman look pretty, shall I say, slim, when she actually isn't that slim in her real self, too. The point is, they just liked slim things. Next up, we are going into the 20s, the 1920s of fashion. Speaking of which, the 1920s of fashion was a bit more elegant, shall I say, also more loosely based. All of these people are females, by the way. There's this girl in an evening dress, right here. A magician, right here. And a concert artist, right here. Concert pianist, right there. And with that, you can go ahead and figure out what the kind of style it is. Now, from here, anyone, rich or poor, pretty much wore the same kind of dress. Mainly because it was 1914 had passed, and now it's the 1920s, and war was over. People went ahead and could go ahead and start off again, and they really needed to go ahead and do something else too. So first of all, they went ahead and needed new dresses. If they wanted to go on the beach, they needed something else. If they wanted to play sports, they needed to do something else. And so this was born. Yet great evening attires were born, and other kinds of ideas and albums. Those were all incorporated into the 1920s fashion movement. Next up, it's the 1930s. Now, in the 1930s, there's like a wardrobe crisis. Now, lots of people liked watching Hollywood back then, and all women actually went ahead and made their dresses, if they could afford them, fit their Hollywood stars as much as possible. Now, this woman wearing a dress by a fashion designer in Mainbro, this is actually called the Princess Line dress, and this was pretty popular at the time as well too. Also, Hollywood actors went ahead and wore this a lot. Alright, now it's the 1940s, and you know what this means. World War II. And of course, with that, food, water, everything, even clothing, was rationed. Literally, everything was needed for the war effort. And so women started becoming a little bit creative. The boxy suits were created, and all those kinds of nice kind of leather things, the belt itself, all of that went ahead and showcased how women can even still go inside here too. It also gave them a masculine look, and they got more freedom in doing their own things as well. Mainly because now they could just go ahead and wear whatever they liked. It's the war, and there's no time to be picky. Also, makeup was still the same. Women still needed to look fashionable. Even the Germans needed to look fashionable. They went ahead, at least the Americans, went ahead and created this kind of outfit too. They also went ahead and made little kinds of outfits from other old clothes to go ahead and sew them into this too. These three women here are actually wearing dresses from the 1940s, which are reminiscent of the nurse's uniform. Just imagine this dress, but white. Then you literally have the nurse's uniform. Alright, next up, we have to go ahead and talk about the 1950s. Technically, this started in 1947, right, 2 years after World War II ended, and with that, in the 1950s, women's newfound independence disappeared again, and so they needed to go ahead, well, at least they were told to go ahead and wear things that made them look beautiful and made them the innocence and the unflexible image of womanhood, which is terrible back then, which is terrible in our today's standards by most women. This is Grace Kelly in the 1955 at Hollywood. This is her evening dress, and this is the queen dress. Apparently, this is the queen dress of all the evening dresses. It's the evening dress for official ones, the formal evening dress. You wore this to parties and balls. You never wore it to anything else. He, of course, also has cocktail dresses, early evening dresses for dinner and the theater, and so much more, which is too complicated if you ask me. Next up, we have more 1950s, except right here, the whole color scheme is actually based on black. Not everyone actually agreed with the strict fashion requirements of the 1950s, and so some of them actually went ahead and wore these. The anti-look, the black. Anita Ekberg, which I'm not showing here, went ahead and did something weird. She just wore a t-shirt, simple bracelets, and tousled hair. That's it. And this woman here is a girl with rolled up jeans going ahead and walking by two young men in narrow striped t-shirt sweater, which kind of must have been pretty interesting for the time as well. Next up, we're going to the 1960s. Personally, the 1960s went ahead and went back to the traditional outlook too, except now skirts can go above the knee. That was pretty fashionable for the time as well, except for the moms who were born in the 1940s, which made them look pretty grandmotherly. Anyways, to the point is, for history, young people do not really have their own mind. Nowadays, young people back then, young people decided to go ahead and rebel and start wearing their own kind of clothing too. And this is one of the most famous ones. This is Leslie Hornby, who is better known as Twiggy, where she went ahead and wore this. She never saw as a part of the movement, but this particularly slim English woman with the innocent look rapidly went ahead and became the fashion icon. She's wearing a pink A-line dress here and a silver ball earrings with straightened bobs and false eyelashes. In fact, this photo particularly actually creeps me out because, well, all of them are pretty much looking at the same face. They may have different hairs and different glows, but they literally have the same face. This is creepy. This is creeping me out. I so want to delete it. Alright. Next up, we have the fabric love, the fashion of the hippies. Now, the hippies themselves actually went ahead and loved wearing loose kinds of things. They needed hippies, and they wanted freedom from everything. Their own traditional ways of life and war. They want to be free of war. They wanted peace. And so they went ahead and wore these kinds of clothing. They were hippies after all. Yeah. Next up, we have the 1970s. The 1970s themselves actually went ahead and gave us so many new kinds of looks as well too. Here we have this. These two women, apparently this is called a semi-stroll, but they call these clothes romantic? Nah, not sold. Alright, next up, you've got the 1980s, and the 1980s themselves went ahead and had pretty high things too. Of course, this is Madonna. Madonna herself went ahead and was the first person to actually go ahead and combine a harsh punk look with girlish new romantic elements. Apparently that's a thing. So they went ahead and she wore the punk stuff, the inside out pants and things, but then she also has makeup, these weird earrings, as well as these pants underneath her actual pants / skirt. Alright, finally you've got the 1990s. Welcome to the 1990s. And finally we're getting back to the modern era here too. This is something more reminiscent of what today people would be more used to. This is Alicia Silverstone in the movie Clueless, where she wore this, and this was the trendy 90s film Clueless, the perfect look, which involved many fashion ideas mixed together. And this is Alexa Silverstein, and she basically went ahead and said, "Shop till you drop." It doesn't make much sense. But then again, this was from grunge techno, and the 90s made music into fashion. Not sold, in my opinion. Next up, we finally go to Japan, and this is the Harajuku style. The Harajuku style itself. The Harajuku style is called that because, well, it's mainly done in Harajuku, Tokyo, Japan. And it's basically all these Japanese cute girls going ahead and wearing kinds of different dresses, different places. It's an enormous catwalk in Harajuku, and they call this cosplay. They don't call themselves fashion people. They call themselves cosplay, apparently. And this is the Harajuku Lolita girl, which Lolita style is basically going ahead and combining old Victorian styles like blouses and things, and combining them with modern day kind of dresses. Finally, we have modern day fashion. Welcome to the 21st century, the early 2000s. Also, I think that 2010s and 2020s actually had different styles because of, well, recent events. But not much has actually changed as far as I've seen. The fashion icon basically stayed the same in the 21st century. You wear whatever you want. You have freedom of speech as long as it's respectful. As long as it doesn't offend different people, it will do. It will do. And by offend, I don't mean like that's short. That dress is too short. Take it off. No, I mean like that shirt is racist. No. Yeah. All right, and this is just another example of, well, of modern day trend looks. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I hope to see you guys soon. Until next time, Shannon, peace. Bye bye. Ba 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 ba. Ba 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 be ba 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 da 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 da